My name is Bastin. I'm a head of TDS Adjudication Services, so we're going to look today at discussing all things mastering deposit protection and end of tenancy return of deposits. So what does TDS do? TDS is not to be confused with DPS or My Deposit, so TDS, Tenancy Deposit Scheme, the Dispute Service. So it's the UK's longest running government-approved tenancy deposit protection scheme. We protect your deposits, and as has been alluded to previously, you can register your deposits either under our insured scheme or our custodial scheme. Under our insured scheme, there's a very low fee that you pay per tenancy, and you get to keep the deposit yourself. Obviously, a lot of our members that use the insured scheme are agents, and obviously that's protected and they are regulated as well, so that will deal with the issue that you were talking about, agents going into liquidation. So as long as the deposit's been registered and protected, all of our member agents are required to be regulated. They're required to have client money protection. They're not unregulated. As we know, independent landlords can also register and protect with us on a pay-as-you-go basis. So you will pay per tenancy, and that's for the life of the tenancy. So if it's currently fixed term, which we have, and it progresses on to a statutory periodic, it's just the one payment per the protection. Custodial, on the other hand, which is a growing scheme, is free to use. You pass the deposit to us the moment you take it, and then we keep it for the duration of the tenancy. What we are required to do by legislation is to enable you to comply with the legislation, which is to protect your deposits, but also the legislation states that we must provide at the end of the tenancy a free alternative dispute resolution service in the event that you are unable to agree with your tenants how that deposit is to be distributed at the end of the tenancy. We've got heaps of resources, guides, tools, webinars, TDS academies, case studies on our website, so please do have a look because it's been really, really useful. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to empower agents, landlords and tenants to actually resolve these disputes themselves, because everyone feels a lot happier when they're resolved themselves as opposed to having a decision thrust upon them. But we're here for you in the event that you're not able to do that. So just a real quick run through how to comply so you don't get the penalties, financial penalties. Any agent landlord taking a deposit from a tenant on an AST, you must safeguard it in an approved scheme. Do use us if you don't. Statutory deadline, as we've mentioned before, is 30 days. It's an absolute obligation. It's an absolute time limit. You can't just go 31 days, oops, sorry, I'm a little bit late, is that okay? No, it's not okay. 30 days is the deadline. You can use both insured and custodial if there are any sort of agents here as well as the landlords, but generally speaking it would be the independent landlord scheme that you would use or the custodial scheme. Now, really key here is that it's not just one thing that you have to do. You don't just register your deposit, you have to register your deposit and protect it and serve prescribed information. If you do one but not the other, you're non-compliant and you will be in trouble of getting statutory penalties. So you must serve the prescribed information as well, and you must do that within 30 days. Do not do it early, don't serve it early, because that also is non-compliant. So if you've handed it over to the tenant before the deposit's been received by you, then you're non-compliant. Okay, so make sure you don't do it early. Key thing in the legislation also is that you must serve prescribed information on a relevant person. A relevant person is any party that is paying the deposit for and on behalf of the tenant. I've just paid a deposit for my daughter at university. Had I paid it to the agent directly, I'm a relevant person. I need prescribed information because I can sue for breach of the legislation as well, even though I'm not named on the tenancy agreement and I'm not living in the property. Okay? What I did do was handed the deposit to my daughter and she handed it to the agent or the landlord. In this second year tenancy, it was directly to the landlord. So then I'm out of the picture, but do remember relevant person. So you just have to just be a little bit aware of where the deposit money is coming from, who it's coming from. Obviously you need to serve various scheme leaflets, and we will provide a deposit protection certificate for you. So what happens if it goes horribly wrong? We've touched on it very, very slightly. So if you don't protect the deposit, then the court can order you to pay the deposit back. You have to do that. And then they can order up to 3 times the deposit as a penalty. And also, following the Localism Act, and the real bite to the legislation is that any Section 21 notice that you serve, which we currently have, obviously with the Renters Reform coming in, that may be abolished, will be invalid. So you will not be able to serve a valid Section 21 notice if you have failed to protect and register the deposit and serve prescribed information. And similarly, if you've protected but you haven't served prescribed information, you'll have to serve the prescribed information even though it's late in order to validate your Section 21 notice, but you may still get taken to court for those penalties for failure to comply. Very quickly, also the Tenant Fees Act has come in. That's some time ago now, June 2019. Obviously, different jurisdictions, different legislation. Holding deposits now, if you're taking a holding deposit, there's legislation around that. It's capped at 1 week's rent, and there's certain criteria as to when you need to give that back, when it becomes refundable or not. And security deposit is capped at 5 weeks' rent, or 6 weeks' rent if it's over £50,000 per year annual income. Pet deposits, if you've taken less than 5 weeks, then of course you can take an extra week for a pet deposit. But if you've taken the maximum deposit, then that is all that you're allowed to take. There is a really good tenant fees matrix on our website, because it's set out for you exactly what are permitted payments now, what you can claim, what can be chargeable, and those that are prohibited. And obviously Dorinda will be fully aware of what fees are permitted and what aren't. Now, it may be that you manage your own properties, we do make deposit protection really, really easy for both agents and landlords. If you are utilising an agent because of all the sort of red tape and everything that you have to remember, then we make it very, very easy from a management perspective with lots of APIs, so you can transfer deposits really quickly. It saves time, it saves money for the agents, and it eliminates errors also, and that's just a few of the providers for CRMs that perhaps agents use, and Dorinda might use those that we are joined with from an API perspective. So, moving on to the TDS sort of resolution. So, dispute resolution is a free service, so it's free to use, and that's what the legislation says. And we're here to help you resolve deposit disputes between landlords and tenants. But at TDS, we offer 3 separate solutions when it comes to dispute resolution. So, TDS resolution is one of them. Self-resolution and early resolution is another a key factor of the difference between us and other schemes, and obviously then the end of tenancy dispute resolution process that we have. So TDS resolution, you might just think that we're here to solve disputes at the end of the tenancy, but if you've got problems mid-tenancy, then we are here to help. It is free to use. So we have TDS resolution, and it's in association with the National Residents Landlords Association. All you have to do is approach us, complete our resolution referral form. We will get back to you within 5 days to say whether it's something that we can actually look at and help you with. We will then contact the other party, and hopefully they will consent. It does require the other party's consent. If they do consent, we'll schedule a meeting and we'll work with you either in a joint meeting or shuttle between meetings on a Zoom call. Hopefully, if agreement is reached, we will then provide a settlement agreement. As I say, it does require the consent of both parties. So the sorts of things there that you might be experiencing by way of problems, you might have rent arrears, and you want to try and get us to help get the rent payments back on track, get a rent repayment order in place. You might have a tenant that actually is refusing access to you to inspect the property, to carry out your usual certificates that you need. And it might be that a tenant comes to us because a landlord's failing to carry out their Section 11 landlord and tenant obligations. They've reported issues and nothing's being done about it. So there's lots of a broad spectrum that we can look at, to include also minor antisocial behaviour. So if you do have problems with tenants and you've tried to resolve it yourself and you would like assistance, then do come to us. So, as I said, we really want to try and empower parties to resolve these disputes themselves, and we have a really innovative portal that enables you to do that. So it's a self-resolution portal where you can go on, you can say what it is that you want to deduct from the deposit, and you will then be liaising with the tenant, and they will jump on and they will say, yes, we're happy to agree. So it's sort of kind of a little bit like a bartering system or eBay, but on the portal. Now, anything that you can agree during that self-resolution stage is signed off and dealt with, and anything that you can't agree then follows through to adjudication at the end of the self-resolution period. In addition to that, we call that the proposal stage. So you make a proposal, and once you're in self-resolution, it's not a dispute. You are not yet in dispute. You're just proposing. You're trying to reach agreement. It's when you don't agree that it then becomes a dispute. Even if you send things to us, we will do our utmost to try and help you. So we have some resolution executives that will look to see whether you're virtually there, you're nearly there, whether there's anything we can do by phoning the landlord, having a quick chat, phoning the tenant, phoning the agent to see whether there's anything else that can be done in order to get these resolved. Because we're very, very aware that you will want, as landlords, your money that you're entitled to, if you've proved it with evidence, to carry out remedial works, and obviously the tenants will require their deposit to move on to their next property. So we really want to get these disputes dealt with quickly, and that's a real key driver, I think, from the government as well. We will perhaps reach out to you, so you might receive a call. And currently, in our England and Wales insured scheme, 28% of all applications that we received have been resolved early by self-resolution or via us giving the parties a call to try and help. So, if you're not able to resolve it yourself, then you will obviously potentially come to dispute. So here's some stats on end of tenancy dispute resolution. So in England and Wales insured, 2022-23, we dealt with 11,430 disputes. 76% are agent tenant raised, 24% are agent landlord raised. So predominantly it's the tenants that are approaching us first for those. The award splits, I'm not sure that you'll be able to see it there. So 12%, 100% goes to the landlords. So that's either because the tenant hasn't responded or because the landlord's evidence is so great that and they've made reasonable claims that it's all able to go to the landlord. 18% is 100% to tenant, and that's because perhaps the landlord or the agent hasn't responded, or the evidence is really poor. And then 70% is split between the parties. So generally speaking, there's a fairly rough, evenish split between the parties when it comes to award. In our England and Wales insured scheme, so what are the disputes? You can see here 50% are cleaning, 44% damage, 13% are 27 redecoration, 13% rent arrears, and gardening is also 13%. 28% in 2022 were resolved early. If you are going to use our insured scheme, if there's an insured scheme, you have to remember, and obviously your agents will deal with this, Davinder will be looking after this for you if you're instructing an agent. There's time limits within which you have to submit the dispute to us, so no sooner than 10 days, no later than 3 months, and obviously there's a 6-year statute of limitations. If you're a custodial scheme, so slightly smaller scheme, although that is growing, and there's a number of landlords that are switching to us as well. So again, 60% agent landlord, 34% raised, so complete switch round in our custodial. You'll see that the stats for the disputes, what they're about, are fairly similar. And we resolved 43% of our disputes early on the self-resolution platform within custodial. So it's really empowers the parties to deal with it themselves. Because we've already got the disputed funds, you can jump on the moment the tenancy is ended, submit your proposal, and then so there's no deadline there. There's no 3-month deadline either once the tenancies end, but there is the statute of limitations. There are obviously other integrations that if you use an agent to manage your property, that they will be familiar with. So we have the depository, which is an end of tenancy management system, and there's an API that comes straight through. When you manage the end of the tenancy through that, you just click a button and it comes straight through to us as a dispute or as a proposal. So what do you need to do in order to reduce your disputes yourself and manage the properties and manage the disputes and resolve them? So key documents, I always say prepare for your dispute at the start of the tenancy rather than try and sort of scrabble around at the end. Make sure you've got a really good tenancy agreement. It's the rules of the game effectively. It sets out the obligations for the landlord and tenant. You must have a deposit use clause within that. If you don't have a deposit use clause, then the deposit cannot be used for any potential breaches. It must set out the liability in the event of a breach of the agreement, and the clauses must be fair and reasonable, and you will need to have a really good detailed inventory or check-in report which will record the standard of cleanliness and condition at the start of the tenancy. Cleanliness and condition are two very different things. So if you've got a check-in report and you're doing your own and it just says good condition and you're claiming cleaning and you haven't made any reference to cleaning at all, then we're not going to assume it was clean. So cleanliness and condition are two very different things. So, Devinder obviously will have clerks and sort of agencies that provide really good detailed inventory reports. We've partnered with Inventory Hive, and what we find is that if you've got a really good check-in report at the start of the tenancy that both parties agree to, then you're less likely to have a dispute at the end of the tenancy because everyone is agreed what the condition and standard of cleanliness is at the start. Photographs are really useful. However, we consider that they supplement the written word. Okay, so if you have an over-reliance on photographs as a check-in report, then that's not necessarily going to do you well in the dispute, and you might find that your claim is compromised. A photograph is not necessarily going to tell me that this carpet is clean. It's not going to tell me that that wall is freshly painted. So it's all in the level of detail that's in the check-in report that you that's provided. So that's the start of the tenancy. Request for change during the tenancy. Keep an audit trail, a written audit trail of anything that goes on in the tenancy, because otherwise it's going to be one party's word against the other, and neither party at the end of the tenancy can rely on a statement alone. It's documentary-based evidence. So if the tenant says, oh, I was allowed to stay in for an extra 3 days because the landlord really liked me without paying rent, then they can't just say that. They then have to provide documentary evidence to show that that was what was agreed. And if they're not able to show it, we'll go to the tenancy agreement. Is there an obligation to pay rent? Yes. Has the tenant breached that obligation? Yes. They've lived there for 3 days and they've not paid it. Have you supported it with evidence? Yes. There's a rent statement. Does the deposit use clause allow the deposit to be used for rent? Yes. Then we're likely to make an award. So that's the process that you would go through when you're considering what deductions you're going to be making. So keep a written record, consider what to do with change of tenants, and again, can be quite complex, so use an agent, and we've got a change of sharer document that's really, really useful as well to get you through that sticky bit, because if you have a change of tenant mid-tenancy and you haven't bound them to the original check-in report and the other tenants have gone, then you're not going to be successful at all. So there's lots of hazards there, effectively, so you need to make sure you get it right. And also ask, do you have a check-in and check-out report? If you haven't got one, then you can do one at a later stage, but obviously anything that's happened before that, you're not going to be able to claim, but you can benchmark it at a later stage. Obviously, if you do have a change of sharers, you will need to make sure that there's change of details on the TDS database. So again, using an agent is key if that's what you would like to do. Minimise disagreements. Do a pre-move inspection. The tenant may volunteer maintenance, so go around and do a pre-move out inspection. And if you leave this like this, it may very well cost you X amount of money. It sort of focuses the mind as to your potential proposal that you're going to make about a claim. The same way that you need to check-in report at the start, you need to check-out report at the end. And again, it has to be as close to the end of the tenancy as possible. And you've got an opportunity to get information from your tenant as well. Forwarding address, if there's anything that's gone wrong, things that might need maintenance. Keep invoices and receipts and quotes. They're helpful not only to support the claim that you're making at the end of the tenancy, but to prove your comments at the start. So you can't just say it was a new carpet at the start of the tenancy. Your check-in report's going to have to say brand new carpet, and it would be really useful if you've got an invoice to provide evidence to show that it was brand new and how much it cost, i.e. it was high quality as opposed to medium or low quality. That's that. Once you've got your checkout report, use our deductions template, and it will set out what it is that you can apply for, propose for. And if you set it out clearly to the tenant, and you are fair and reasonable about what you're claiming, then you're more likely to get the tenant to actually agree. We've also got a really good product lifespan guide, which will set out and give you some guidance as to when you need to redecorate, how long carpets last, how long mattresses last, how long white goods last, depending on their quality as well. So that's really, really useful for you. You must consider fair wear and tear and betterment when you're making a proposal. Okay, so for fair wear and tear, it's damage, depreciation, loss resulting from ordinary use. So you must factor in the length of the tenancy, the number and ages of the relationships of the tenants, the condition, age, cost, and the items at the start of the tenancy. Reasonable usage. Things will just break, particularly mechanical, like door handles or washing machine doors or things like that. You know, they will just break from natural usage, but there is obviously other things where it will be clearly damaged. And again, look at our useful lifespan guide. What is betterment? So just think of this. If the claim that you're making against the tenant's deposit in any way, shape or form places you, as a landlord, in a better position than you were at the start of the tenancy, either financially or materially, then you have not followed and allowed for the principle of betterment, and your claim will not be successful to the extent that you have made the claim. So, for example, I think I've actually got some one case study a bit later on. In order for you to submit to us, there has to be a dispute. If your tenant's not responding to you, you don't know that there's a dispute, they're just not responding to you. So if that is the case, under our custodial scheme, you would need to use our statutory declaration, and if you're using any other scheme, then you would need to perhaps get sign a letter of indemnity, or be aware that if you take some money from that deposit because you've got an absconded tenant, they're not responding to you, there is that 6-year period within which they could raise their head and say, where's my deposit? And you would then need to give it back if they took you to court. So make sure that what you have taken, if that's what you're going to do, is fair and reasonable. So if you do come to us, agent landlord raises first, then you get 10 working days to submit the evidence. If the tenant raises, we don't ask the tenant for anything. The reason we don't ask the tenant for anything is because the tenant doesn't have to do anything. It's not for them to submit evidence. The burden of proof rests with agents, landlords, the party wishing to make a claim against the deposit, not the tenant. They could just sit back and stay completely stumped if they wanted to. If they raise, we'll say thank you very much, we'll go to the agent landlord, you then submit, we'll then go to the tenant and say everything's there for you to have a look at. You've got 10 days to rebut those claims if you wish to. And so when you submit evidence, you need to make sure that you put everything in that you want the adjudicator to see. So what do we mean by evidence? Tenancy agreements, anything that's been happened by way of additional contract terms. You might have agreed for them to redecorate during the tenancy, but you've set conditions to it. It must be in a good workmanlike manner, it must be light colour, it must be reinstated at the end to its original colour at the end of the tenancy. Any addendums, that might be pet addendums, if you've allowed them to have a pet. Your check-in report is key document, as is your checkout report, both close to the start and to the end. If it's any different, then they become very much more unreliable as evidence, because anyone could have gone in the intervening period. Dated photographs, so if you are going to use photographs, they supplement the written word, but please make sure that they're dated and they're labelled so that we can know when they were taken. Invoices and receipts, as I've said, not just from what you're claiming at the end, but what things cost you at the start to prove that this is how much it cost you. Emails and correspondence, rent statements and third-party contractor reports. Third-party contractor reports are really key. Witness statements, no, not really useful at all, because there's no impartiality there. It's often the mother that says, I've cleaned that property right, at the end of the tenancy, I can assure you it's clean. Third-party contractor reports are really, really useful for damp and mould. We spoke about damp and mould earlier. You're not able to just say, it's a lifestyle issue. You have to prove with evidence that it is the tenant's lifestyle issue, as opposed to it being an inherent defect. So you're not able to just say something and just assume that the adjudicator is going to take your word for it, because they won't. You have to provide documentary evidence. So you'd need something like, let's say you are claiming to replace a carpet because there's a massive amount of a big red wine stain right in the middle. Yeah, you can't just say the stain won't come out. You have to provide evidence to show that the stain won't come out, which is a contractor's report saying, I've tried to clean it, it's not coming out, it's residual, and then you can claim for the cleaning, and then you can claim for compensation for loss in aesthetic value. Okay? As I've mentioned, very quickly, tenant's money, if you don't provide evidence to support it, then you have to return the deposit to the tenant. The onus is on the agent landlord, but that onus shifts between the parties, as I've said. So if the tenant said, I could stay for 3 days rent-free, the onus has now shifted to the tenant to provide with evidence that that is what was agreed. Balance of probabilities, so it's not beyond all reasonable doubt. It's just 51% persuaded by one party's evidence more so than the other. We take documents at face value. We're not inquisitorial. If you say something like, oh, do give me a ring, I've got lots of other photographs, or I've got things that I can show you, we're not going to do that. You need to provide everything that you want us to see at the appropriate time within that 10 working day period. And really do ask yourself, is the claim fair or reasonable? So the things that you'll be looking for, these are the only remedies that the adjudicator can make. Okay? Making good is the one that you should always go to first. Yeah? So it's cleaning or repair. Trying to clean the item or the area and or repair it. All too often we find that parties jump straight to replacement. So replacement will only ever be considered by an adjudicator if the item is so severely and extensively damaged that it is beyond economic repair or it is no longer usable as the item. And even if we did agree that it was actually beyond economic repair and that it could no longer be used, we would factor in fair wear and tear. We'd factor in the age of the property, its condition at the start of the tenancy, the length of the tenancy, the number of tenants, and the reasonable lifespan and the reasonable usage of it. So you will never ever, you should never be asking for or treating a tenant's deposit as if it was a new for old insurance policy. And that will be the very first thing that a tenant will balk at and dig their heels in and not want to agree. So make sure your claims are really fair and reasonable, and say to them that, you know, I've factored in fair wear and tear, I've factored in the principle of betterment. And you know, if you have agents dealing with it for you, they understand, Davinder will understand all of these principles that the adjudication team have to follow, and is law, and will be able to guide you in the level of claim that you make, and also to present it in such a way that it will be resolved really, really quickly. Compensation is the last one. So there's a ring mark on this table. It won't come off. It's still a table. It can still be used as a table. You could perhaps repair it, perhaps sand varnish it, and get a contribution towards that, or compensation if it's not going to come out for loss in aesthetic value. Okay, so a very quick case study for you. Landlord's claim £120 for a full deep clean at the end of the tenancy and for rubbish removal, saying that the property was professionally cleaned at the start and dirty at the end, and that there were belongings left behind that required removal. So to support the claim, the landlord provided a copy of the tenancy agreement. Great. If you don't provide a copy of the tenancy agreement, or you don't have one, then there is no possible chance of you getting any monies from the tenant's deposit, because we're not able to assume what the obligations were in the tenancy agreement. So we can't make the assumption that the tenant had to clean. And they provided 3 undated photographs of the bedroom, bathroom and living room at the end of the tenancy. That's all that we got. So what did the tenant say? So the tenant disputed the claim, stating that the property was not clean, particularly the kitchen at the start of the tenancy, and that the items left were not his and were present when he moved in. Okay? So he's also said that the boiler was not working and they had no hot water, so they should not have to pay. Okay, so this is a key thing here, that the adjudicator cannot consider counterclaims. Okay, so effectively that is a counterclaim. The purpose of the deposit is being taken as security for breach of a tenant obligation. What the tenant is trying to argue there is that there's a breach of a landlord obligation. Yeah, that you've not complied with your landlord Section 11 obligations. You've allowed them to live in the property for 3 months, no hot water, no heating, and they're trying to argue that as their defence. The adjudication team cannot consider counterclaims. If there's a real pure counterclaim, then the tenant should withdraw consent and go to court. So that's what the tenant said in this particular instance. What did the adjudicator decide? Well, the deposit, as I've said, is taken as security for non-performance of tenant obligation. The tenancy agreement did contain a clause that provided for the tenant to return the property to the same standard and cleanliness at the start, so that's good. We've got a tenancy, we've got a clause. Did they breach it? Because you have to prove that that it's been breached. If the tenant had said, "Oh, I accept it was clean," and I left a mark on the carpet, then on balance, we might accept that the property was domestically clean at the start and that there is now a stain because the tenants admitted it. But without that documentary evidence or that admission, no award was made because we couldn't make a comparison from the start and the end. And the checkout evidence was very, very poor. Undated photographs just of 3 rooms, and the claim was for £120 for an entire clean of the property. At the very, very best, there would have been a clean of the kitchen, the bathroom and the living room if they were sufficiently shown that there was they were dirty. Just be aware, there is a new product that we have launched with open bricks. It's called T-Life. Davinda might be aware of it. Tenants, because obviously there is a lot of competition for properties at the moment, and sometimes, particularly in London, you can have 30, 40 people looking at the same property. You might have to fill in an application form in order to actually view the property. So tenants now have access to a stress-free way to move in and manage their tenancy free and exclusive to TDS. So if a tenant comes to you and they say, "I've got the T-Life app," you'll know what it is, and effectively they are getting themselves rent ready, and they're also doing it for agents as well. So they've got themselves. They've already done their affordability checks, they've done their right to rent, they've verified their ID, they're fully referenced, and they've got previous rent payment history, and then they've got it all together and they just share it with the agent or they share it with the landlord. So everything that you need to know about them is there ready for you to do, so you don't have to do anything. So we've got probably thousands and thousands of tenants are downloading this app. It's free to use, so have a look at it just so that you're familiar with it. If a tenant does come up and say, "I'd like to share all my details with you," or "I'd like to share all my details with the agent via T-Life." Okay, so that's something there. So there's 3 simple steps for them to use. Download the app, register it for free, complete the rent ready section, get all your documents together, and share it. You can just share it for a period of time, and that will be, I think, 60 days. And I think it shows real forethought of a tenant. And if they can do all that, and they're really, up for it, then they hopefully will be a good tenant for you as well. And I think it's the references of 60-day lifespan. So if you don't use TDS, then how can we help you? So we are a great customer service, so we answer calls within 34 seconds. This is April to September. Dispute resolution is 23 days. That's from the end of the evidence gathering process and our final checks, and those final checks are where we will try and help you resolve it. And we email answer within 9 hours. So there's no sort of hanging on the end of the telephone for you. So if you do use us, great. If you don't, it's very easy to switch, and you can just let your current provider let you know you want to switch, and our expert switching team will do everything for you, and our onboarding team will ensure that you receive all of the TDS benefits. So that was really quick, because I'm very conscious that it's gone on and on, and we're much later. But very happy to take any questions. If you've got any particular disputes at the moment and you're wondering how to deal with it, should I be claiming, am I claiming the right amount?
On a couple of occasions, the tenant hasn't paid the last month. So
yes. So effectively, that is really the reason why the TDP legislation came about, because there was this, feeling that it was being abused by landlords, unscrupulous landlords, because they refused to give the deposit back at the end of the tenancy, and as a result of that, the tenants just didn't pay their last month's rent because they said, "Well, you take it out of my deposit." But then that leaves the landlord nowhere to go, from a damage dilapidations perspective. So if they haven't paid the last month's rent, then you will be able to claim rent arrears at the end of the tenancy. and you will hopefully the deposit will be able to take that. You'll be able to take that from the deposit. Alternatively, you might have rent guarantee insurance, in which case you would claim on that, and perhaps you would want to use the deposit for the dilapidations, and then perhaps go to court for the rent arrears, because that's just kind of like a rubber stamp job usually in court. I know there's delays and everything as well. So, but no, they're not able to just withhold the last month's rent and say take it from the deposit. So as long as you've got a tenancy agreement, as long as it's an obligation for them to pay rent, as long as you can show that they've breached that obligation, then you can claim. Unless, of course, they're going down the counterclaim route, in which case they might withdraw consent from going to dispute, and they might want to go to court.
The TDIF Act, does it have the ability to tell you about the tenants' past tenancies and whether they have disputes? And
No, it doesn't. It doesn't currently. No.
Is that something you might?
It is something that I think we have looked at. Yes. Yeah. But it certainly gives payment histories, and it enables tenants to actually start to build up their credit rating as well. So that's good. Any other questions? Quick coats on and go.